I went back and I looked at the 9/12 mission statement. Ask yourself these questions. Do you watch the direction that America is being taken and feel powerless to stop it? Do you believe your voice isn't loud enough to be heard over the noise anymore? Do you read the headlines every day and feel an empty pit in your stomach as if you're alone and you're seeing your neighbor's house burn down and there's nothing you can do? Add fear to those three questions. Are you afraid? Do not be. There will be so many others like you on 828 or wherever you're going to go and join. They're all joined in a common bond with a common pledge to take a peaceful stand for their country. This is the time to stand. Edmund Burke said, "When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fail one by one." Fear is the way they get you to do nothing. It's a tool. They terrorize you. They call you names. Many of these people are nothing more than terrorists. Economic terrorists, free speech terrorists, religious terrorists, racial terrorists. They are attempting to silence you through terror. They haven't gone through a flight school or strapped bombs to their chests or anything like that, but they are terrorists just the same. I have no problem with them having, I have no problem with this. You want to say, you think this is the answer? Good. Let's debate that. But they won't actually come out and tell you the truth. You don't have to put up with it any longer. You surround them. Stand up peacefully. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for your rights. Stand up for your way of life. Stand up for liberty. Martin Luther King knew one thing. If you want to succeed, you must have faith in the American people. Because when you put hatred and violence and fear side by side with faith and determination, people become as strong as the mountains. And you put those two things side by side, and the American people will always pick this. Always. Every time. I know it's tough. I know it's tough to stand up in the union halls to your union leaders. You're not the bad guy here. You're in the union. You know, I know you. You don't condone the strong-arm tactics. You don't condone them giving all their money to these politicians, left or right. You do not agree with the beatdowns that they're administering, like the one in St. Louis. Stand up like they did in Missouri to the politicians. Continue to do it, and if they don't listen to you, do it again. You stand up and you talk, even if no one will listen. You talk to your family and your friends. You get down on your knees, most importantly, and you pray. You beg forgiveness for our country. You beg forgiveness. You beg for understanding. You beg for inspiration. You beg for protection on our president, on our Congress, on our land. And then you reach out and you lock arms with your fellow Americans. You're not going to agree with people on everything. You're not supposed to. The progressives are going to go crazy over this monologue. I don't care. They will scream and whine about me calling them terrorists, despite the fact that they do it to you and me on a daily basis. They'll scream that there's nothing wrong with what Congress has done or what this president and administration has done so far. Well, let's see. In America, I don't think we take over the auto industry. We don't take over health care. We listen to the people. They've taken over the banks and other institutions. They've completely changed the way money flows through the system, and you don't know it yet, or your neighbors probably don't. They've given themselves the ability to seize any institution they deem a threat. Meanwhile, exempting the government-sponsored entities most responsible for the mortgage meltdown, Fannie and Freddie, don't even look there. They've taken control of the student loans. They have, through regulation, not legislation, set up a system to take control of energy in our homes. They are circulating memos in the administration that would effectively grant amnesty to illegals, again, without Congress. They have radically altered our relationships with our strongest allies, our longest allies, our only allies. They have, as promised, fundamentally transformed our country. We do not need to transform. All we need to do is restore our principles. And I don't care what Washington does. I no longer care what they say. I know the truth. 2 + 2 = 4. Will you promise yourself and your family that you will never answer 5 or 6 or 2? Will you? Back in a minute. I'm asking those of you who have not stood yet to stand. We do not need to transform. We need to restore principles. I found something that we're going to share on tomorrow night's show, and I want to show it to you now. It's from an Air Force training manual from 1954. I'll show you the actual manual tomorrow night. The idea uppermost in the minds of men who founded the United States was that each and every human being was important. They were convinced that the importance of the individual did not come from any grant of the state. That his importance of the individual did not come from any position that he had achieved, nor from any power he had acquired, nor from any wealth he had amassed. They knew that the importance of man came from the very source of his life. Because man was made in the image and likeness of God, he had a destiny to achieve. And because he had a destiny to achieve, he had the unalienable right and the inherent freedom to achieve it. That was in our Air Force manual in 1954. How far we have fallen. Look, I don't know what your destiny is. I don't know. Maybe you're supposed to achieve it while you're poor or rich. That's the meaningless stuff. But you're here for a reason. And it ain't to sit on the sidelines. And it ain't to get violent. We've been transformed. When we talk about taking our country back, from the left yells, "Oh, from a black man," is that? I could care less what color he is. Content of character. It's not even worthy of a response anymore. We're not taking the country back from Barack Obama. I was saying these things under George W. Bush. I couldn't care less. We are taking it back from the transformers, the progressives, who have been slowly but surely redirecting our path for 100 years. Obama is just the latest in a long line, maybe the boldest. Do you realize that you are living in historic times? Do you realize that? Do you realize your children and your grandchildren will ask about this time? The time to sit on the couch and to do nothing and watch American Idol has passed. So now what do you do? What do you do? I'll help you with that. And I want to show you something that sits in my office now. I look at every day. Next. Months ago, when the flotilla was going on, I spoke about the defense of Israel and the defense of Jews having a right to live. And I did 2 shows on it, and pretty alone. I got a lot of heat and but somebody, he was writing a biography of a guy named Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I had never heard of him. He's a hero of the left. But they look at his politics. I look at his character. This guy, he sent me a box, and in it I opened it up, and it now sits in my office, and I brought it into the studio because I want you to see it. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, you need to read about this guy. He was unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. He was a Lutheran minister in Germany, and in 1933 he was on the radio when Hitler took office and seized power, and he said, "This is wrong, there's something wrong here," and they shut him off. They took the radio station off the air before the end of the hour. He lasted almost to the end of the war. It didn't end well for him. He was one of the first people to say, stand up. He tried to get preachers to gather together and put your differences aside and stand with the Jews. We have to. During that 2-day period when I was talking about the Israeli flotilla, I told you then that you're not going to be held guiltless if you don't stand up. And I said, you know, people think that they can just stay silent and then they're not involved, but they are. Their silence is speech. I got this 2 days later. Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. I look at this every single day. We are teaching our children. We are teaching. Every time you watch this show and you're screaming at the TV, he's right, but then you don't do anything. Every time you say, you come home, you think your kids aren't listening, and you talk about the union bosses that you work for, and you say this is wrong, but you keep the job because you need the money. Look, I understand. I understand. I understand. But it's the next generation that's going to redeem us. What are we teaching our kids? What are we doing? Comes back again to 8:28. Don't teach your children that you're powerless. You were born at this time for a reason. Your kids have been born at this time for a reason. Show them what that reason is. Stand up. Come and join me arm in arm. The steps of the Lincoln Memorial on 8/28. Leave your signs at home. Bring your children. In the coming weeks, you're going to learn more about this. This is the George Washington Badge of Merit. And tomorrow, a whole studio audience full of teenagers. What do they know about the Republican democracy? From New York, good night, America.